You have to unmute. Live from Ave Maria, Florida. We are live tackling about the topic of lightheadedness, anxiety, and many things. So if you like this topic, hang on because we're going to dissect, understand why you feel lightheaded when it's hot, why you feel lightheaded when you're having anxiety or having or when you're having pain, because there is a neurophysiologic basis for that. It's not you. It's not you that being weak. It is neurophysiology. And there are things that we can do in terms of making ourselves prevent this happening from you, like what I felt when I was ushering at the graduation um, baccalaureate mass inside the church. It was so hot. So imagine you're in a hot situation, in a hot environment. You don't have to perspire. You're wearing a toga. You're wearing this in a warm environment, let alone outside, and you stay there. You feel flush. Your face feels flush. Suddenly, you feel like, oh, there you go again. You feel flushing in your face, and then you feel like lightheaded. And if you're not careful about intervening right away, then you can fall. But the worst thing, fall injury, it can fracture your hip. It can also damage your brain by bleeding. But why is this happening? So, clue, you need the blood vessels, vasodilation, meaning the blood vessels dilate, meaning it opens up, and the reflex is constrict to preserve. You need blood going to the brain, or what you call cerebral perfusion, to be able to operate the brain. And then you also need circulation to the heart, to the arteries, so that the body can pump blood pressure and all the stuff. What happens is when you have sudden impulse of pain and you're sensitive, for example, the vagus nerve is not toned, meaning you have this tendency, propensity to collapse because your blood vessel is always dilating like this. It cannot pump blood to the brain. Then you feel like helpless. You feel like flushed. Your heart starts racing because you will try to compensate blood to make sure that blood is pumping to the head. Hello, I'm Anthony. Thanks for watching. I mean, Michael. So it is related to the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve comes from the area here at the cervical, and then there's um, there's two branches, run right and left, and then it travels long to the intestine and also uh, to the splanchnic area, even to the bladder. That's why the most common response would be you feel flushed in your face, you feel tachycardia, you feel heart racing, you feel lightheaded because you don't feel blood going to the brain, and then you have this feeling of jittery feeling in your stomach. It's almost like something is needing to get out. Sometimes you feel hypermotility. That's why you need to go to the bathroom, both number one and number two. So these are natural phenomenon that you need to be aware. If you're predisposed to this, then be prepared. So what happens? The vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the most important player in this. There's a sympathetic tone and the parasympathetic tone. The vagus nerve is responsible to make it say, if it's toned, then the autonomic nervous system is in the parasympathetic tone, meaning you're able to rest and digest. If you're settling down in the sympathetic tone, you're fight and flight. There's no compromise. You just feel threatened all the time. So what happens is there are five senses: eyes, you see it; nose, you smell it; taste, you taste it; ears, your nose, touch. Imagine if you have a trauma. That's the worst scenario. You saw a fight or you were raped or something like that. You can actually that is embanked in the memory of having the odor, the movement, the music, the color, and the response is involuntary. Now I'm leading towards why when you have anxiety, you trigger this kind of symptoms. It's a defense, it's a fight flight. So that's the reason why many of these patients with anxiety, with trauma, unknowingly they feel like helpless. Suddenly their heart starts racing. But subconsciously, there is a reminder going to the amygdala saying, run, threat, out, go. It could be the color of the shirt that reminded the attacker, or the smell of the perfume, or the noise around it, or even the feeling around it, the music that can trigger response to the amygdala and then process it as a fight flight. So what happens is you have trauma in the past, you have recent trauma, and even if you feel like, yes, I'm so strong, I've forgiven that person because this and that, there's still something lingering on inside the amygdala. Because what happens also is this: when you have trauma, when your five senses going in to the amygdala, it's supposed to go to the prefrontal cortex where it's processed and said, okay, these symptoms are actually not threatening. It's okay, baby. Calm down. Unfortunately, during acute trauma, these impulses doesn't go to the prefrontal cortex. It stays in the amygdala, and here it's nurtured by this baby. The amygdala, which is the baby always crying, saying, oh, oh, I was hurt, I was hurt. That's why you need to process this mentally, psychologically, and also process physically, tone the tone of the vagus nerve. Because it is important that the vagus nerve is always prepared, that it's always in the parasympathetic tone. Because if you don't prepare for this, immediately the sympathetic area, the sympathetic tone overrides. And then you will have no control. It's an autonomic response. Boom, suddenly you have these palpitations or that. Related to that also, remind me, is volume. This is the same mechanism when you have heat stroke or heat exhaustion. Heat stroke is when you really collapse. Heat exhaustion is when you have the symptoms of you feel tired, you feel exhausted, you feel lightheaded. Those are symptoms. Because the vagus nerve is very sensitive also to the baroreceptors, or the receptor for the pressure, usually here in the carotid sinus and the aortic arch. If you don't have a good support of volume, then the autonomic nervous system switches, taps the sympathetic tone and say, hey, we need something. Either you fight, flight because you're almost dying. First thing you need to do is to hydrate. Clue? That's the reason why I ask. If you see the students here, they always have a water bottle in their bags because their thirst mechanism is intact, meaning slight decrease in their volume, they feel thirsty, they need to do that. Unfortunately, in the mature category, above 40, the thirst mechanism is shut down or not functioning properly. It's not sensitive. Take, for example, this experiment. In a small room, they actually use the 50-year-old on a 40-year-old policeman average, and then the teenagers in that room, same temperature, same condition. The teenagers finished, consumed all the water supply that were allotted equally with the older men, mature men. And then these people in the same category, they just continued talking whole day, and then they didn't even bother finishing the pitcher of the jug of water. How does that translate to you practically? That means you really need to bring water bottle, especially if you're living in Florida. Because by the time your body is already saying, I don't have volume, I don't have any hydration, thirst mechanism comes in later as the symptoms becomes so worse. Like for example, in my case, I was there. I forgot to bring bottle. I was drinking before, but unfortunately, it was not enough. So I just stood there graciously, and then you feel like flush in the face. I say, "There you go again." And then if you don't pay attention to this, then you'll collapse. So you lean on, safeguard, take deep breath in and out, and then I was able to after communion able to come here and drink, but still it wasn't enough. I went out. It was hot. Remember that day, Friday? Then you feel lightheaded again. So that is important. Hydration, keep the volume of your blood. Of course, to remind you practical things that when you drink something in your mouth, it takes about 4 hours to go to the bladder. So make some provisions where you're going to be in 4 hours. Make sure there's a bathroom nearby. That's exactly the reason why when you travel, hydrate, you need to empty your bladder before you drive. Because there's another tip, the caveat also. According to the urologist, the worst injury when you the worst injury that can happen is when your urinary bladder ruptures. It's difficult to repair. So if you have a bladder that's intact, the pressure is in, you have an impact, the bladder bursts. You don't want that to happen. Nobody talks about that all the time until you see it in the hospital. It's like, yeah, first thing, empty your bladder before you drive and make sure you pace yourself with hydration because hydration is very important. Got it? Bada bing, bada boom. Next, it is important to realize that the symptoms of anxiety, for example, is automatic. You have this reminder of something that you didn't even know. In fact, most of the first episode of attack of anxiety, it was unprovoked. I mean, there's no reason, there was no threat, but it came from the remote past that's embedded in the memory bank, and then it reacts when there's some sensory perceptions um, that would remind the amygdala saying yes, go, go, go. It's the same mechanism where you meet a person, for example, a stranger in the bar or anywhere, and you have this gut feeling of say, I don't feel comfortable with this person. The gut feeling, remember, the gut is supplied by the vagus nerve, and the response is automatic. Of course, it can be primitive, like it could be a projection, meaning, for example, I see a blue shirt right there, and it reminded me of somebody who slapped my face, who was wearing blue. I negatively project that everybody wearing blue is a danger. So you have to be careful about that also. But that's a reality of psychology and also the medicine interacting. So there are two parts of let's go back again to the vagus nerve because it's very important to understand. There are two parts of the vagus nerves, the ventral vagal system and the dorsal vagal system. The ventral vagal system is social engagement, safety. That's where you feel like, I feel comfortable with you. I don't have to escape. I don't have to fight flight. It is associated with calmness, connectivity, connection, hugging, talking, oxytocin goes up, a flexibility, regulation. It is mediated by the myelinated vagus pathways from the nucleus ambiguous, which needs toning, meaning when you tone, you keep on exercising, your muscle gets toned. The importance of guided breathing cannot be underestimated. That is why it is important not just to pray, but to meditate, because meditation entails you two elements: guided breathing. Let's review. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 6 or 8, hold 4. You repeat that at least 20 times, and you'll have equivalent to 100 push-ups. And your vagus nerve is already toned. So that means when there's a threat, your vagus nerve is able um, to react properly instead of, here's a good response. Nowadays, it turns out that the generation millennium and the generation Z behind them have a different perception when they're touched, even not even in the private area, even just tapping. Take for example, I have a friend who's a teacher um, in elementary. Basically, Sister Julia, when I was an 8-year-old, grade two, she would touch me all the time. Keep quiet, even if you're quiet. You cannot do that anymore at this age. Even you pat the back or the shoulder, the kid will say, "Why are you touching me?" And then a report comes out. So you have to be cautious of the change of the dynamics because we are in a different time, different time zone. So these are important responses that you have to consider because touching can be a threat. Touching can be nurturing for mature men and women, especially for different culture. However, it is important to know that because it can be a threat. Do not be offended when you touch when you hug somebody and they refuse and say, "Okay, I understand. It's not comfortable for you." In most culture, it's not really a thing to do. Most Americans are not perceptive to that. Latinos or the Mediterranean, they do a lot of hugging. So the ventral vagal system is what you need, the parasympathetic too, but you need to increase that the tone by doing exercises of breathing. And what a good thing to do is to do Jesus, Son of the Living God, when you inhale, have mercy on us sinners when you exhale. At the same time, you're adoring Jesus through his passion and you're making your vagus nerve healthy. The sympathetic system, fight flight, is the other area of the vagus of the autonomic nervous system. It it enables you to mobilize danger. So the response will be to increase your heart rate, to pump blood to everything, to the muscles so you can run, to the adrenals to increase your blood pressure, to increase the cortisol, and then the cortisol increases sugar so that there will be more fuel acutely. Produces classic anxiety physiology. You have these palpitations, you have this fear, impending doom. But if you know your prefrontal cortex is intact and you train them by guided breathing and meditation, then this can be prevented. Even response to negative comments like that you usually would prevent or do angry, you will have the response will be more tamed. You don't react in an angry manner. You could be distracted, you could be disappointed, but you don't get into anger, wars, rage. The dorsal vagal system is very primitive. It's almost like a snake. You know, when a snake or a worm, the reptilian, they just sit in the corner and be safe. If your vagus nerve is not toned, especially when you didn't deal with a trauma in the past, especially during childhood, the dorsal vagal system is equivalent to shutting down or immobilization. That's the reason why people just freeze. I remembered we were in the ICU in Indiana, and there was this crazy woman, psychotic, and just suddenly slapped the nurse, and her eyeglasses fell off. And the response of my friend, he froze. It's a primitive response. But then, if you're ready, it would have been like, okay, get away. It is a primitive conservation response, meaning you're conserving your energy. It's mediated by older unmyelinated vagus nerve, unmyelinated. How do you make it more myelinated? By what? Guided breathing to make it thick. Because doing this guided breathing, BDNF or brain derived neurotropic factor is increased, which increases the sheath, the thickness of the myelin in sheath. It is also responsible for um, increasing the pathway of that image. For example, when you want to get when you master the the mindfulness of the guided breathing, oh no, the mindfulness of that specific mystery, like the agony of the garden, or um, or meditating on the wound of Jesus. If you continue doing that, a myelin sheath increases such that that pathway becomes automatic and you don't have to be distracted when you're doing meditation. So try it. Repeat that meditation for 1 week. For example, agony in the garden. Keep that scene. Another type of cell is also activated called the mirror cell, in such a way that that scene in the agony in the garden becomes really vivid and you cannot be distracted. You go like this, who cares? I'm still connected to the adoration. So that's the key, that you have to practice meditation every day. Father Richard, in his homily one time, I think I told you the story, that his mentor or the formator in his seminary would go to the cattle barn many times a day because he loves the cow. So imagine, thank you, Dr. Loberanes, for watching in Illinois. Imagine you are volume okay. Please say hello. The imagine what he said was that even the priest was saying, frequenting that because he loves the cow. What if we change the paradigm? That because we love Jesus, we want to the adoration chapel and say hello. Imagine the myelin sheath in the brain and also transmitting that to the soul. It will increase in bonding. The oxytocin related to your bonding with Jesus will increase, and the more you will increase your love and your affinity to him, and then you will be more, it's easy for you to go. And that explains why, if you get the habit of going to adoration regularly, it's easy for you to go back because you will miss it. Not emotionally, but in the brain. There's a habit, 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 habit. And the more you do this, the more you're close to Jesus. Because he said, the more you're doing the mindfulness of being focusing, for example, in the adoration, just staring like Saint Teresa of the child Jesus, the more you get connected. And the more you meditate on his passion, these saints would say, if you cannot know you cannot know Jesus that much if you don't meditate on his passion. So going back to the where we came from, the symptoms of lightheadedness is related to the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a nerve supply of the autonomic nervous system divided into two, sympathetic and parasympathetic. And the highest scientific evidence there's there to tone the vagus nerve is guided breathing and add in meditation. So if you don't want to be lightheaded, and with added value also, meditate, guided breathing, and tone the vagus nerve. If you're vulnerable to all these things, then hydrate. It is imperative that you hydrate. Do not underestimate the effect of heat. What is the physiology? The heat would actually dilate your blood vessels. So instead of pumping the blood going up to the brain, the blood is still dwelling in the splanchnic area, in the intestine, and also in the lower extremity. That's why it's best for you to sit down or even lie down when you feel lightheaded. But remember, drink, drink, drink. Catch up with the drinking. Don't say that because I already have drunk so much, it's enough. Listen to your body. If you feel thirsty, and usually the main complaint is that my mouth is so dry when you have this. It is for a good reason, because you need volume. So I would like to see more of these in summer in Ave Maria. People drinking, bringing some water bottle with them. but make sure you calculate where you need to be. 4 hours when you drink, you need to go to the bathroom. And then I'm going to start a fee in case you want to come here to the bathroom. Said no, $1, $1, one. It's horrible though when you go. For example, where did I go? Poland, Warsaw. Cold. I went there. They charged, and then if you the attendant was screaming at me. Like, I don't care. I don't understand you. I need to go.
Went to Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico.
Oh, the same.
And I didn't understand there were two lines.
Yeah.
One was for toilet paper, the other wasn't. So I said, "There's no line." So I go, there's no toilet.
Yes.
They hand you the toilet paper.
Yeah.
Pay for it.
Yeah.
They hand you the
Yeah.
toilet paper.
So we just talking about here about local what do you call this local provisions in when you visit the country, because it can be dangerous if you don't prepare for it. Hydration again. Hydration makes some cooling effect. That's the reason why it's not unusual for American expat going to the Philippines, because it's so hot. I was told temperature can go as high as 110. One time, my friend who is a doctor said, it's so hot here, it's 110 Fahrenheit. You know what it is? Fever is actually 100 degrees above, 100 degrees Fahrenheit and above. That's fever. So essentially, when you're there, you're exposing yourself to the physiology of fever. Your blood vessels dilate, your face is flushed. How much more if you're subjected to 110? That's convulsion. I don't know how I could survive really, because I have to really make some plans for that. But then, in conclusion, anxiety symptom can be explained by this polyvagal theory. Do not underestimate the physiology behind that. It is very important that you provide yourself with some provisions, hydrate, cool down. Most important thing is that practice guided breathing and meditation. Not only you tone the vagus nerve, but you also become close to Jesus by meditating in his passion. Let's say, for example, first thing in the morning, do 20 repetitions of in and out, inhale, exhale. That's the first thing I did when I had tachycardia. At noon, think about the Angelus. That's a very good devotion. Breathe in before you go back to lunch. Take deep breath, 20 sessions. Feed your the vagus nerve. Tone the vagus nerve. 3 o'clock, chaplet of divine mercy. When you inhale, for the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and the whole world. For the sake of Marilu Lobiranes, she's watching, have mercy on us sinners. So you do this, and then before you go home, or as you are wrapping up in the office, do this, pause, and before you go to bed. Here's the catch. I had a patient yesterday, and he's very famous here in Ave Maria. He was so preoccupied with the graduation activity. He's a professor. His blood pressure shot up to 180. Sounds familiar, my friend?
Yes.
So it went up, came here. Oh no, he didn't come here because he happened on a weekend. So he was helped by the wife. And it's just beautiful. You have to listen. Kuya one, claro. So what happened was his blood pressure go up, and I gave him instructions beforehand to take the blood pressure medicine. It didn't work. So they decided they pray the Holy Rosary. And he tried to do breathing out, 180, and they check it after the Rosary. Guess where the blood pressure went down? About 130 over 80. It's amazing. So Dr. Lobiranes, Kuya Juan, it is possible. You can actually, it's so powerful. So it's not just the healing mechanism, it's neurophysiology. It's the taurine that calms the brain, the serotonin goes up, you feel happy. GABA comes down, that's why your brain operates much calmer. And next, you'll be able to sleep better because melatonin also goes up when you meditate. So anxiety that provokes lightheadedness, fainting spells, can be prevented. You know yourself. Do you have anxiety? Do you have trauma from the past unresolved? Are you tuned to the heat? Just don't go to a place where you're not used to the environment because it can be catastrophic. You can die. There's such thing as heat exhaustion to heat stroke, and heat stroke can make you can kill you. So fight flight anxiety can be prevented by guided breathing. Hyperarousal, this comes from trauma. It can be also be dealt with knowing about the trauma and also guided breathing back again. Hydration, be practical, stay cool. Not even just in the shade, not just even in the what do you call this? The sombra, como sombra, shade. In the shade, your body temperature has to be cool. That's the reason why at night you have to have your body temperature, not actually the temperature for the brain that sleeps, that's regulating for sleep, is close to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, like a cave. Because if you want to sleep, the body temperature or the temperature in the head has to cool down. So you can cover your sheets, expose the head. That's cool, and that will help you sleep after you do the guided breathing. So I hope this helps you understand, appreciate what you go through, and how many patients, how many of you have experienced lightheadedness or fainting spells? It's horrible, no? It's actually 90% in the group here have experienced. I experienced that. It's and if you don't know that you're not going to die, really. I have a friend that pain inflicted, just needle. It's that explains when you have this anxiety for needles, they pass out, pale as can be. Oh, I'm scared of this and this, but just let them breathe in and out. As long as they're breathing, you'd be fine. But
a lot of elderly do die of heat stroke.
say it again.
A lot of elderly people.
Absolutely, because there's a spectrum of heat exhaustion and then heat stroke. The heat stroke is like a stroke. You can develop acute inflammation in your body and can cause heart attack and stroke in the brain. So for now, Steve, headache related to dehydration. Yes, headache, dehydration definitely can cause headache. Why? Because there's so many things that that activates it. It triggers the inflammatory pathway, such that these acute inflammation, interleukin 1, 6, tumor necrosis factor, gets out there in the circulation and can go headache. Also, the vasoconstriction and vasodilation, which goes hand in hand, also can cause headache. So hydrate. Lightheadedly, if you don't have any financial gifts, then my friend is making noise. That what about headache if you don't have money? Then we would have to give you some. Come down here to Ave Maria. If you have any, yes. If you have any questions from the audience, I will continue with the Q&A here in the room. Do you have any questions? Ken?
What triggers something referred to as a panic attack?
Yes. The question is, what triggers panic attacks? Amygdala. Panic attack is actually a response to impending threat or doom. I think you came in a little bit. I explained that the amygdala is the receiving amplifier of the perception. Eyes, vision, smell, taste, hearing, and touch. Take, for example, a classic trauma, a rape, or seeing somebody that you see a crime. Then everything around it, whether you like it or not, will be posited in the memory bank, in the amygdala. If you don't process that it's okay, we are safe now, this and that, then it lingers in the amygdala. But if it's processed well, it goes to the executive function, then the executive function, the prefrontal cortex, will tell you, hey, little boy, amygdala, it's okay, you're safe here. So the panic attack usually is involuntary and is a response of something that is reminding you of that particular threat that is you probably didn't know much anymore. Because a lot of us remember also when when you're traumatized, there is actually amnesia from behind, meaning you will not be able to recall much of the trauma from behind. Could it be defense mechanism? But that's actually because of the lack of signaling going to the uh, you can get into the brain, the prefrontal cortex. So the this signaling mechanism is very effective, and it needs to be toned. And your friend is the vagus nerve, and the friend of the vagus nerve, guided breathing, and add meditation. So, question.
Is this where forgiveness comes into the picture?
Absolutely, I can tell you this: forgiveness, not only that, but gratitude. This goes hand in hand. When you have um, when you forgive, essentially you're also having gratitude. Thank you for forgiving me, Lord. Thank you. You ask gratitude also to Jesus that you're, because it's difficult to forgive, because it takes the real power to heal that portion. So when you're open to forgiveness, you say gratitude. It combines state of sinfulness, because you are in a state of sin. Maybe I'm not a theologian, because you're guilty of something. It activates a sympathetic tone. The sympathetic tone will give you lack of peace. It reverberates again bad memories, and it becomes like a vicious cycle. So it's recommended at the end of the day you do examination of conscience. 3, according to Saint Ignatius Loyola, that they practice Don Alvaro and Saint Jose Maria Escrivá. 1, ask for gratitude, thank you. If you don't know how to say thank you, just say thank you for my hair, my eyes, that I'm breathing to that. Thank you for my relationship. Thank you for my parents. Thank you for my people around me. Thank you for the good weather or bad. 2nd, ask for forgiveness. So gratitude, thank you, forgiveness. First, don't go far. Ask forgiveness for the things that you have done to your body that could have offended Jesus. Your pride, and what you have hurt to other people. 3rd would be to ask for more grace, especially asking grace that you can love Jesus more, or you'll be picked by Jesus. Remember, I did not choose you, I chose you. So wait for the invitation. But you can only wait for the invitation because, number 1, if you are friends with him. How do you make friends? Make amends. Confession. Once a week. So this mechanism of this is the gratitude and the forgiveness. These are related because when you I'm trying to open the Tesla from in the because anyway, so I got distracted, but it's okay. It's my daughter. I have to. So gratitude and forgiveness, they're very much related. Jesus already have explained to that. He has to forgive us because his love is unconditional. And Father Leandro actually mentioned that to me. He gave me a video clip about all these things that you cannot have a peace of mind if you don't do gratitude and meditate. Include your gratitude and forgiveness in your meditation. I hope that answers the question.
So we forgive her for having the blue shirt.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Getting traumatized?
Oops, Daisy.
Yes. Any other question?
You know, sometimes as we get older, you can confuse being hungry with thirst.
Uh-huh.
So you should probably drink as opposed to eating.
Yes. The reason for that, the question is, the comment is that when you're hungry, usually it's not actually that you're hungry. You're probably thirsty. Why? Because the center for thirst and hunger is a paper thin distance in the brain. So if you feel thirsty first, most likely you don't really need to eat. So do that trick first, especially if you're trying to minimize caloric intake. So that's important that we bring all the time some jug of water or lemonade in your car.
And also, it said
Mary.
too that you shouldn't wait till you're thirsty because dehydration sets in before thirst
Late.
sets in.
Especially when you are mature. Mary had commented here, and it's true that you don't wait for the thirst to happen. You have to regulate. You have to drink through the day before, because by the time you feel really thirsty, especially if you're mature, it might be too late. You unknowingly, maybe your kidney already is dehydrated. Quite honestly, so the mechanics of that is actually very helpful. From the audience, do you have any question? Steve, thank you. Dr. Lubiranes, thank you for watching us. If you have no question, then we are going to end the live stream, and this will be transported as a video with some entertaining format. Till next week, thank you very much.